All right. I think we're recording. Lael Stone, thank you so much for joining The First Word. It's a privilege and a pleasure to have to share your time and to gain some of your wisdom and experience. So I first personally came across your TED Talk, which was just a brand new perspective of parenting, very calm, very palatable, and really relatable, because I think what it did for me was remind me that I was a kid once. I was little. I used to go through all of the emotions kids do when their blocks fall over or something breaks and everything is just, the world falls apart. And now as a parent, it's so easy to look at that situation and just think, we'll just build it again, or hurry up, or, just get really frustrated in the moment. So your TED Talk was quite a brilliant reminder that, that little people have a little world and they're so protective and proud of their world. And us as parents and adults, instead of getting frustrated, is just take a little bit more time, show a little bit more empathy and, as you say, compassion to both understand our children, but just to help them learn how to get over these little barriers and to, what their emotions are and how to sit with them. And so, yes, from listening to your TED Talk, I then found your podcast with The Imperfects, and then obviously your amazing book, Raising Compassionate and Resilient Children, and you've got another book coming out, so that's very exciting for you. But yes, what I really loved about reading your bio and things about you is you're very open about the fact that you speak from the heart of a child. Mm. So we spoke about it, and I thought it would be fun for me to speak from the heart of an overwhelmed mother or a parent.
Yep.
And we'll go through some of the struggles that I feel are maybe reflective of today's busy day and age, where we're all in a rush to do a million things, and to gain your wisdom in response to those parental thoughts.
Well, thank you firstly for having me, Tori. I'm so happy to be here. And I think it's a beautiful way to do it. I would see more stressed and overwhelmed parents than I do see parents who are calm and feel like they're nailing parenting. It's a big thing, parenting, and especially in this day and age, it's tricky. It's really tricky. So whatever support we can give parents, I'm all for.
Amazing. So we'll kick off. We will ask the famous question. What is the first word you think of when you hear the word womanhood?
This is funny. The first word that comes to my mind is power.
Yes. Wow. Not what
Which
I thought you'd say.
If you asked me that 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been the answer. Yeah. But now, at this phase of my life, I go, oof, power. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you are a mother of kids who are in their teens now, older children.
Oh, they're adults, yeah. So I have a 23-year-old, 20-year-old, and a 16-year-old who's like, she's 35, so we kind of count her as an adult. So I have definitely journeyed from, all those years of little people and schooling and all the stuff, in those teenage years, to now have beautiful adult kiddos who I have such a beautiful, divine relationship with. And, I often say, anything I've studied, learned, listened to, read, all that kind of stuff, nothing compares to trying to raise your kids as consciously as possible. So it is absolutely from 23 years of parenting and making all the mistakes and doing my own work that I think has really kind of informed my work in the world.
You've got such a wealth, and your experience goes right back to birth and helping women through that experience and then forming that initial connection with the baby. So you do have an exceptionally holistic view of the world that is.
Yeah. I think my work in birth many, many years ago was so profound in seeing really the beginning spaces of it, particularly with where couples were at and then their birth experience and, their connection and attunement to babies and attachment. And then that moved into just parenting. And then I spent 5 years teaching sex ed to teenagers. So I worked with teens for a really long time, just helping them, get connected to their bodies and pleasure and figuring out how to navigate this whole sex and relationship thing. And then that led on to actually even building a school. So I feel like I've kind of covered all the places that we can go to when it is about children or it is being a parent.
Yeah. Well, the fact you have a school and now you can sort of build all of this knowledge and experience into that school, must be so nice for you. Such a reward to see these kids go through,
Yeah.
grow with you.
Yeah, it's amazing. Oh, look, I'm really proud of what we've done in our school. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy building a school, and we're only in our fourth year, so we're still learning a lot. And like anything, you make mistakes, you figure out what works, what doesn't. It's been such a beautiful experience of growth, and yet the initial ideas and visions that both Mel and I had, who I built the school with, seeing them come to life is amazing, and then it actually exceeding our expectations is even more brilliant. So I can't wait to see what it's going to be like in another 10 years.
Well, we will dive into some of these thoughts. So I'll read them, and then I will ask for your thoughts on
Okay.
each. Okay, so the first parental thought, which I thought is, I would assume, quite common these days. So I coexist with a mental illness. Medication helps a lot, but I need more support. I did see a psychologist, however, after a series of sessions, I concluded with this. This is not my priority right now. My illness is not harmful to anyone else, so it can wait until my kids are older when I have more time to focus on myself.
Yes, well, we start with a good one. The first thing I always say is that we are all doing our own individual journey, and there is no right way to do something, right? And I think that's the same with parenting. There's no, this is the way you should do it. There's some beautiful guidelines out there, but at the end of the day, we are all our own unique selves. That we have children in front of us who are their own beautiful, unique beings. And, I don't ever believe in saying to someone, this is what you should or shouldn't do. I think what I take from that statement is, perhaps dabbling into doing a little bit of work on themselves or leaning into that mental illness. And I wonder if perhaps, dipping their toe in a little bit felt a bit confronting and this is too hard and I don't want to do it, which is very common, happens a lot for people. Or it feels like this is going to require a lot from me. And right now I'm just flat chat getting the kids to school and kinder and basketball practice and all the things. So again, there's no right or wrong in, I think, what a person should do. But I guess what I do know is that when we become parents, all of our own childhood wounds, a lot of how we view the world, our imprints, all those kind of things, rise to the surface for us to deal with, because our beautiful children come in and they kind of come in with this lens that says, hey, mum, dad, caregiver, I don't really want to carry your crap around. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to behave in certain ways just to mirror that back to you. So hopefully what you do is lean into your stuff, because what's most important for me is to feel free in my being. What's most important for me is for me to live a life that I need to live, being authentically connected to me. And when you project your stuff onto me, which we often do unconsciously, that doesn't feel good. So I'm going to mirror that back to you. So I really believe, from my own personal experience, parenthood is the biggest spiritual teaching you can possibly have. Like, I joke, if you want to become enlightened and you think you need to sit on a mountain for 10 years and meditate, I'm like, no way, just try and raise your kids consciously. That will try and give you enlightenment, right? Because you get all your buttons pushed and stuff comes up for you. And I really do believe each generation of child is like, hey, we need to make the next generation more aware, more conscious, all those kind of things. And so every parent has the opportunity to lean into their stuff and to do that work. And I'm a big fan of doing the work, which means looking at what is the stories that sit there. What is that? Now, I'm not an expert on mental illness, but from my work and what I've learned over the years, what I do know is that a lot of stuff, particularly around anxiety, depression, those kind of things, really do stem from often us not getting our needs met when we were little, not feeling safe to express how we feel, learning from a young age that it's easier if I just numb these feelings than actually express them. And so then that can often turn up in adulthood, and then really when we're parenting, then that often gets exposed even more. So part of, I guess, my reflection on that question is, firstly, do what feels right for you. I really do believe in timing as well. We have to feel ready to kind of look inside Pandora's box. You know, we have to feel ready to go, yep, there's stuff here for me. Now, sometimes we get forced to do that because our kids are mirroring stuff or behaving in certain ways, or, you know, we're feeling highly anxious and we can't leave the house or whatever. And we're like, I have to lean into this. I have to do this. But most people by default will kind of ignore something until it's so loud that they can't. But I think one of the beautiful gifts of parenting is the opportunity to look at our crap and who we are and how we want to be in the world, and then do some work on it. Because at the end of the day, and I think this is for me what was the biggest game changer in making me kind of do a whole lot of process work, was my children are constantly watching, and they're watching me, and they're going, this is what it is to be a human in the world. So the way I deal with my feelings, the way I process anger, the way I speak about my friends, the way I interact with the work I do, whatever it is, they're watching. Like, these are all imprints that our kids are watching, and they go, oh, this is how we do it. And so one of the things I often invite parents to go is, well, who do you want your kid to be in the world? And whoever you want them to be, are you modeling that? Because that's where they're learning it from. So that beautiful statement, I would be like, I really, first and foremost, invite you to really tune into what feels right for you, because you are the best authority on your life and your body and your children. And then perhaps lean into, does it feel scary for me to kind of uncover some of this? I would also add to, finding the right therapist is absolutely gold when we're wanting to do the work. Not all therapists are created equal, right? You've got to find someone who feels safe for you. You've got to find someone that resonates with you. You've got to find someone who works in a way that feels good for you. And if you're working with someone that doesn't feel good, go find someone else, right? Because I think it's really important that we find the right people to work with. So they would be my kind of invitations to lean into what that story is. And, I kind of really do believe one of the greatest gifts we can give our kids is to know our own story and do our own work, because the more that we can process, the less our kids are going to have to carry.
It is amazing, I think, if you are someone who is fearful to speak openly about your past or trigger points or go back in time, unloading that does lift weight. And in an instant, that can help you feel lighter because you're shedding that weight. 100%. So it's fearful sometimes, scary to say the words, to say how you feel. But in my experience, and if I really just put on my big girl pants and just say the words out loud, I can instantly I feel a little bit lighter in that moment, and then it's building blocks to feel even lighter the next time.
Yeah. I think you bring up a beautiful point there. It's often the fear of the idea of it is greater than actually doing it. Yeah. And I often say to people, you've actually lived through the worst. Like, the trauma's already happened. Like, it's that's not happening again. What we're doing is we uncover it, or we work with it, or that kind of stuff. We are giving it room to breathe. We are giving it room to dissipate, so we no longer have to carry it. And you're so right. When we speak the words, when we cry, when we get it out, we feel lighter, because we're like, I don't have to carry this heaviness around with me anymore.
I think that's the beauty as well of podcasts these days. You listen to so many stories and people open up about their experiences, and when you hear them speak, you think, oh, me too. That's how I feel, or that's what I did, or that's what I experienced. And even that helps. And that, is just a little bit of, like a bit of motivation to just remind you that it is okay to express the parts of your life which are darker. But if you do, and you allow someone else to say, oh, me too, you'll think, oh, so we share that. It's not just me. We can share that weight. Yeah. And it's a nice, it's sort of a nice way to resolve those issues or past experiences.
I think one of the most powerful healing things, I run these groups, I've run them for years, and it's usually strangers that all come together, and we look at some of the imprints that happen from our childhood and where we are and all that kind of stuff. And one of the most profound pieces of running that is when people hear each other's stories, and these are strangers, right? And listening to a stranger say, this is what happened to me, or that's how I feel about that. other people are like, yes, I'm not alone in this, and yes, I really relate to that. And there is healing that happens when we share stories. There's healing that happens when we acknowledge it's not just me, because we often feel like we're isolated and alone in these stories and stuff that happens to us. But there has always been power in coming together and sharing stories and sitting and listening with gentle ears and compassion. It makes a difference. Adds to our healing.
So, parent thought number 2. I want my child to know that it's okay to feel down. I worry, however, that if I expose them to words such as depression, anxiety, or panic, I will burst their bubble of innocence and evoke a sense of fear.
Okay, great question. So I think it is so important that we teach children that all of us are happy and joyous and excited, and we are also sad and angry and jealous and frustrated. They are all parts of being human. And a 2-year-old is allowed to feel angry. A 5-year-old is allowed to feel jealous around something. A 10-year-old is allowed to feel frustrated because things aren't working the way they want them to. And I hear that around, am I going to bust this bubble? I probably wouldn't use the words necessary, depression or anxiety and stuff like that with little people. I think they are kind of labels that we use as adults to put on stuff to define things. But anxiety is the same as I feel really nervous about something. I feel nervous about starting school in a new grade. And I don't necessarily think we have to say, oh, you're anxious. We can just say, yeah, you feel nervous. It's really common. When we do something new, we can get butterflies in our tummy that make us go, gosh, I feel unsure about this, or I feel scared. So I think sometimes the tricky part of using those big names and labels, they carry a lot of weight. Right? They carry a lot of weight, and we can often define ourselves through them. I have anxiety, or I have depression, or all those kind of things. And yes, you are also a magnificent human, and you are all sorts of other things as well as feeling that sometimes. I mean, I think we all go through phases where we feel a bit depressed, and we all go through phases where we feel worried or unsure or anxious. Like, I think they're part of the human condition. And I kind of tend to move away more from labels than anything, because I think I don't love it in myself or with my own kids to go, this is who you are, because I'm like, this is a part of you, and it is just a part of you. And there's a part of you that feels sad at the moment, and that is okay. And what does that sad need? Does it need cuddles? Does it need to cry? Does it need to be listened to? Does it need to draw a picture? And that sad will also pass. Right. And so I think to keep it simple would be my tips of just like, hey, that's how you feel, and how wonderful you can identify that in your body, and what does your body need for that feeling.
It is so lovely and so eye-opening as well if I cry and Hamish sees me, because he's 4, and he is instantly curious but also very empathetic about him. He can recognize that tears and the emotion and the body language that comes with crying means something, and instantly he warms towards me. And I think most kids are like that, and I do. And it's the same if he frustrates me or does something naughty, and I just say, Mum is feeling angry right now because of X, Y, Z. I still love you, but I'm angry because of X, Y, Z. And letting them see you and then ask questions, or witness it. And it's only something I've started to do since actually listening to your TED Talk, and just, I think you have to show kids within boundaries what feelings are, because in their little world, apart from books and things, you are their everything. You're there to show them, teach them, answer their questions.
And even more than that, not only when we show them feelings like that, we are saying, hey, this is part of being human, and it's okay for you to feel it as well. But then what we do is we give them the opportunity to witness what we then do with those feelings. And that's the most powerful point. So when you're sad, you can say, hey, I am sad. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call a friend because I feel better when I speak to someone. Or I'm going to do some stretching on the floor. That feels good. Or, I'm just going to have a little cry. Like, you are modeling a healthy way to move that. It's the same with being angry. This is one of the things I talk about a lot, is we need to show children healthy ways to move anger. Anger is not a bad thing. It just says to us, hey, boundaries are being crossed, or, there's something here that's not being met for me, or, it's tapping me into some past wounds. And we need to be able to show children, hey, this is a healthy way to move anger. Let's put on some music and dance and shake our body. Let's pick up some socks and throw them against the wall. Let's go outside and yell at the trees. Like, our children are constantly watching. So what are we modeling to them around how we be with our feelings and emotions? It's really important for them to see it.
So this is our third parental thought. Every day I have, and it sort of leans nicely into what we've just spoken about, but every day I have a moment, if not moments, where I am not my best self. I yell, I become frustrated, I swear, I rush, I'm impatient. For every other moment of the day, however, I'm a great parent. I'm kind, patient, selfless, generous, compassionate, and loving. Is this enough for them?
Yeah. Oh, I just want to say the world hears you with this statement, because I think this is most parents on some level. This has been me definitely, when I had little kids. And the first thing I just want to acknowledge is parenting is tough in this day and age, right? It was very different when our parents were parents, or even our grandparents. There was often there was one job to do, which is I'm just looking after the kids or the house. And whereas us, we're like, I'm doing that and I'm working, and then I'm also trying to, volunteer at this thing, and I'm doing that, and I'm racing the kids to basketball. And, there's a lot that's going on. We live very busy, stressed lives. And we also, we're working against a clock these days, and children don't work against a clock. They work with their own beautiful little rhythm. So we're kind of up against it to begin with. I just want to acknowledge that. It's tough. And we also are not parenting in the village, which is where we should be, which is where we can ask for a timeout from, another parent or a friend. And can you watch the kids for half an hour while I have a cup of tea because I need a break, or, I have to get this thing done. So with the lack of village, it becomes even tougher, right? We have these expectations of how it should roll. So the first thing I just want to say is that, what we are not wrong in having these reactions, because we're actually parenting in a really stressed environment most of the time. Now, if you lived in the country, you didn't have to worry about getting your kids to school on time, you could just kind of roll with the flow of the day, you'd probably be the craziest, happiest parent ever. But it's often those other things that bring the stress to us. So I really do, come back to we have to firstly be compassionate for the places and spaces where we lose it. And in an ideal world, we don't yell at our kids. And in an ideal world, we don't blame and shame them. But sometimes it does happen. And I think the thing is, if it happens more than it doesn't, then that's when we've kind of got a bit of an issue, and we probably need to lean into it. But our goal really often come back to this is, if I'm parenting in a way that feels stressful a lot of the time, what needs to change here? Do I need some support? Do we need to take something off our plate? Are we living the life that we want to live? Because, our kids are little for just a short amount of time. And if we are in this massive hustle, what is the impact on them? What is the impact on my relationship? What is the impact on, my nervous system? Because children, what they love is a calm nervous system in a parent. That's kind of the goal. They love it when mum and dad's kind of fun and relaxed and breathing. And I know that that's not the reality in every day, right? We have days where we have to juggle that. But I think we need to sometimes come back to, is how we're doing life really serving us? And is there another way that we could do it? And I know the question really was, is it enough, though, that I'm being compassionate and kind? And I think absolutely children are very forgiving. Children are, hardwired for that connection and attunement and attachment. And if we're showing that most of the time, then that's beautiful. I think if we are getting angry and we are getting frustrated, we must repair, must own our behavior and repair with our children. But I think the thing we want to look out for, which is where it becomes a problem, is if we are up and down all the time, our children will often have a sense of, I don't know what version of my parent I'm going to get. Yeah. And that actually can feel stressful for their little nervous system, because they're going to walk into the room and they're gauging and scanning and going, well, where is my parent today? Are they playful and happy and is it all good? Or are they about to yell at me because I didn't put my shoes away? Now that feels stressful, right? Because we are, as a child, when we're constantly scanning for danger and we're constantly scanning to go, is it safe here? And so if we've got a sense that that's happening, then I think we probably need to address, all right, what do I need to do here to create a bit more balance, or how do I support myself more so I can be that calm parent I want to be? And again, it doesn't mean, if you yell once a week or something and over, I don't know, because you're tired, it's okay. Like, that is okay. You own it, you move on. But if you were yelling like 5 or 6 times a day and then you kind of play a bit, I'd be like, there's probably something there to work with a little bit. And again, I can't give you the time fraction of 70% is good. I don't really believe in that. I think we're all doing the best job we know how, right? This is tricky.
Absolutely. And tomorrow is a new day. Today
totally.
was more yelling than we, are proud of. Tomorrow's a new day, and the next day is a new day.
Yeah. I know within our own being, we know when we are kind of in balance and when we're not, and where we want it to be. And I think that's where we need to check it for ourselves.
Yeah. And I from where I'm at with parenting, having 4 and almost 2, I remember when Hayne was born and you have that first child and you have such an expectation of yourself to follow the books and follow the apps and the schedules and the routines and the way they start to eat. And, that causes, when that doesn't go the way the book says, the app says, the child doesn't, sleep until whatever, there's the angst that causes, the sense of failure that causes, and that all is built up in you. Yes. It's amazing when I had my second, and I just said from the get-go with my husband Will, I said, we will do sleep routines, but I cannot follow to the exact point that this app, we're just going to go for the awake times of him and our needs. And the calmness that instantly brought of not having to tick every single box, because you just have to say to yourself, my child is still sleeping, my child is still eating, and allow yourself to do it your way. And your nervous system all of a sudden just goes.
Well, I think it's a beautiful point you bring up, Tori, is we often outsource our intuition, right?
Oh, totally. It's such a good way of putting it.
Yeah, this parenting expert knows better, or actually, no, you know, right? And one of the parts of integrating into parenthood is learning to trust your intuition, is learning to trust, how does this feel for me? And we have to, we have to read the books and we listen to the podcast and we do all that. And then you have to go, is that a yes for me? Like, is that a yes for the child in front of me? And so I think it's really important that we get discerning about information, and by all means it's really good to learn, but I think then we've got to run it through that filter and go, where does that land in my world?
Yeah. Does this suit our schedule? But also, does it suit my personality, my ability to cope? I want my children to have boundaries and experience appropriate discipline for their own benefit. I am separated from my partner, and therefore I am unable to control what happens when they are not in my care. I feel this confuses my children and causes them to act out.
So this is probably, I'd say, a bit of a multi-layered, loaded question in the sense of like where I might go with this one. So, like, one point you can look at is, what do we believe discipline is? Because discipline actually means to teach. It doesn't mean to make feel bad, right? Discipline is actually how we teach somebody to understand and learn something. And I think one of the first things to be curious about is we have all grown up, most of the adults I work with, in a behaviorism paradigm, which basically means when you're good, I'll reward you, and when you're bad, I'll take something away. And so for a lot of us, the way we were raised, we have an imprint that says if your child does something wrong or makes a mistake or something, we must punish them in order to teach them to do better. Now, there's so much that goes with that, because often what drives children's behaviour is because a need's not being met, it's because they don't understand something, or it can be because there's a whole lot of past hurts, or there's like got a really stressed little nervous system on board because they've been at kinder all day with 25 other kids and they haven't really got their needs met, and then they come home and the only way they can kind of reset their beautiful bodies and their mind is to have a beautiful, glorious tantrum because you cut their sandwich the wrong way, right? It's very normal. It's part of the innate healing wisdom of the body to kind of offload the stresses so we come back into balance. And our little kiddos do that by crying and raging, and then they learn, as they get a little bit older, to use their words and figure it out. So all of that is very, very normal. But we have grown up in an environment for a long time where we see that as wrong, and we believe that children should be good all the time. And a well-behaved child is someone who is actually compliant. right? And I say to parents all the time, the goal is not to raise good boys and good girls. It's actually not. The goal is to raise children who are connected to themselves, who have strong yeses and nos, who listen to their intuition, who stand up for when stuff is not all right. Like, the goal is not to have a compliant child that just does whatever they're told, because when we do that, what often happens is a child is learning to abandon themselves in order to keep everybody else happy. And then we grow up to be adults who spend most of our life looking outside of ourselves to go, do you approve of me? Am I okay? Am I pretty enough? Am I making enough money? Am I thin enough? Am I smart enough? Like, we're constantly scanning to go, am I approved in the world? Because that is often where our imprint comes from. So I think the thing firstly is when we have to redefine what is discipline. And I would say what discipline is beautiful guiding of our children. And so, I think it is really important to have boundaries with children. I'm not advocating at all that we just let kids do whatever they want. We absolutely have to have boundaries, but how we set boundaries is really important. Setting boundaries from a compassionate, calm place is vital. When we're setting boundaries because we're yelling and screaming at our kids, then usually we're out of balance and we need to regroup. But children need boundaries because they need boundaries to know, hey, I'm not willing for you to throw the ball inside because that could be dangerous and we could smash a window. And I'm going to say no to that, mate. So we need to do it outside. And if your child's not willing to do that, you're like, well, I'm going to come take the ball off you, mate, because, our value in our family is keeping our house really lovely, and that's not going to work. So, but it's not about punishing them, and it's not about like you're not allowed to go out and play with your ball. It's just like, I'm going to guide you as to what work and why is here. I mean, the other thing too is, we can set boundaries and our kids can have a whole big backpack full of feelings. And sometimes when we set that boundary, they need to push up against it and offload all those feelings that are sitting there for them. And that's the way they actually do it. So boundaries are really important. Now, coming to the second part of that question of, well, how do we know what happens when, perhaps they're at their dad's house and we do one thing here and we do another thing there? We cannot control that. You're right. We can't control what goes on in another house. And, I hear stories all the time from parents I work with. At one point, they feel like their partner is way too strict and harsh and, is using a lot of punishments and consequences for the kids. And then there's other dynamics where the partner's like, nah, you can sit on the iPad for 4 hours, it's fine, right? So we can't control how that is, and that is very challenging. I have such compassion for solo or separated parents because it's really tricky. You sometimes then get back kids who are really unbalanced depending on what's happened. And so my recommendation for that is, we cannot control what happens there, but what we can do is be ready to hold space for when they come back, which means that when you do have that reconnection back in for an hour or two, all you do is play. You play and you connect and you hold space for your child to offload those big feelings if they've got some, so that they are learning that when they come back into your arms, you are a safe place and they can bring you all their upset and they can let it go. And that's how they learn how to process it. Now, as children grow, they get very clever at knowing what is appropriate where and what they can do in certain places. Children learn as soon as they go to school, hey, it's not appropriate really here in this place to have a big cry because no one's actually going to listen to me or they're going to tell me to stop. Or they might learn at the grandparents' place, my grandparents don't tolerate it when I get angry, so they be good the whole weekend, right? And then as soon as they come home, then they just kind of unleash on you, which is, again, not a bad thing because they're like, wow, I've had to be good all weekend and, Nanny and Papa don't like it when I do this, so here's all my feelings. And that's very normal and understandable. So I come back to this place and go, our job as parents is to stay attuned enough to our kiddos that when they do come back from being somewhere or the school day or kinder or the other parent or whatever, that we can have enough spaciousness just to connect in with them in the beginning, to hold a beautiful space for them to offload whatever's there if they've got feelings. And that brings them back into balance. And then you have conversations about it. Is it different at Dad's house? Okay, so what does it look like there? Okay, and I know that's how it might feel at Dad's, but in my house, we're going to do this. And it's okay if you don't like it, and it's okay if that feels tricky for you, but these are my guidelines. And we can do that with empathy and compassion and hold that space in that way. So it's not easy. I mean, in an ideal world, all parents would do their work and sort out their crap and we'd all be calm, connected, compassionate parents, but we're not, right? Because we've all got our own traumas and stuff and we're all doing the best we can. So at the end of the day, all we can do is keep coming back to these moments of, am I creating enough safety for my child to offload or process what is happening in the other spaces in their world?
I love, you say so often, hold space. It's so especially when they have big days at school or days when they're out of your care, when you get them back, when they come back into your care, just to be ready to hold, you don't quite know what you're going to get, but there's going to be bigness in their feelings and they're going to be tired or this or that, to just be prepared for that and be ready to hold their feelings. And it's so easy to forget and get home, like, okay, I've got this going on, you do this, blah, blah, blah. But just that daily check-in, okay, I just need to sit with them and unwind, decompress with them.
Yes.
And let them calm and then move forward. Go back a few steps before going forward.
Love it. Beautiful.
Yeah. But just, you do have to actively remind yourself, because, life is busy, as you said, and we're stressed and we feel like we have to do, especially mums. We feel like, the washing has to be done, the dinner, this, that, we get funny, school is great, but the pickup is, it's kind of in the middle of the day at 3:00 and they've come home and we have so much more to do. I guess if we give them that time, the space that we might actually find outside of that would be more expansive than if we didn't. So love that, right? It's an interesting one. And you've certainly touched on it a little bit as we've spoken, but for those parents who are thinking, my child is hard work. I read the books, I use the tools, I work on myself. I feel as if nothing is working and I am exhausted.
Yeah. Oh, I just want to say big compassion and a lot of love to that, because that's hard. It's really, really hard, and I hear you. And I think there's a lot of parents that feel like that, and it can feel really yucky to say, I don't like parenting and this really sucks, and I find it really hard. It can feel hard to say that. And you can also love your child deeply at the same time. So I just want to hold that. I think if anybody finds them in this space where they're like, I do not know what to do and this feels really tricky, then my first tip is always, you need some listening time. You need to have a safe place to take all these thoughts, all these feelings, a place to just vent and rage and get upset about how tricky it feels. Because I often find that when we are stuck in parenting and when there is that rub going on, there's usually something happening for us where we're not meeting one of our needs. And then that is kind of being mirrored in our kids. And it's also, we're stuck in this story. So, like to give you a bit of an example, early on when I was parenting and I wasn't doing a lot of this work yet, I was just kind of trying to survive like most people. And I didn't love mothering. I didn't love parenting. I found my son really tricky, even though I look back and go, he wasn't. It was just me who was freaking out about being a mum, right? And I didn't really like it, and I found him really difficult. And actually, I kind of fought with myself, and it didn't feel good at all. And really what actually came to the fore as it got messier and messier was I just felt so strung out. I needed a break. But I didn't feel like I could give myself a break because I had a really strong imprint and story that said, as a mum, what being a good mum is you are just selfless and you just give all the time. And if you sit down to take a break, then it means that you're lazy. Or, if you go and do something, then you should feel guilty. And this is a very common theme. I have worked with thousands of mothers, and when I say that, a lot of women are like, I know that story. And it often comes from because what we watched our own mothers do. Our own mothers were beautiful at being martyrs. They learnt to be a good mother is you put yourself last and you meet everyone else's needs. They didn't really model to us ways of our self-care or speaking for what we need or that kind of stuff, right? And again, they were doing the best job they knew how. And so a lot of us have been modeled that, and this is what we believe mothering is. And then we have a whole story around, well, what if I take a break? And what if I go away for a weekend? And then we have a whole lot that goes with that we carry with it. And they're often just stories and belief systems that we've taken on board from our family of origin. And a lot of the time they're not even true, but they're what keeps us stuck sometimes in the story. Now, I don't know if that's the case for this person who's asked this question, but it's a theme that comes up a lot. I find that when somebody is finding that there's no movement with their kids, something's really stuck, that A, firstly, they need some listening time, and B, sometimes it's looking at, are you actually meeting your own needs? Because if you're not meeting your needs, it's going to be so much harder to meet your child in those spaces. And our kids are sometimes, they push us really hard to go, you need a break, and I'm going to push you so hard to the edge that you finally take one. Because what a child wants is a parent that's connected to themselves. And when we're not connected to ourselves, our kids will often push and nudge in a way to make us do that work, to make us look at it. And so I guess what I'd say to this listener is, I invite you to get some listening time, and I also invite you to keep looking for some support. Maybe where you've been looking isn't the right support. Maybe as in some coaching or some parenting, support, counselling, stuff like that. Because there's, again, like therapists, not everything is created equal, and it's there's a lot that we can do within it. So that would probably be my suggestion. And also to just give yourself a big dose of empathy and compassion. It's hard. And I'm so really hearing you about how tricky it feels at the moment.
I guess using what you've said as an analogy, like if you're someone who, runs and you sprain your ankle, but you've got to do that run tomorrow, so you get up and you do it and it's painful. Unless you give unless you give yourself the time to heal, it's going to hurt. It's going to be harder. So just stop, break, and then get back on board, enjoy it, thrive after you've healed.
Yeah.
And allow yourself to do that.
I think it's a big thing I see in mothering particularly is we can get really stuck in a pattern in a story, and we often have a belief system that's tied in with that as to why we don't change it. And I know that can sound really harsh, and people are like, I don't want to be in this position, and that feels really hard. But I'm like, as humans, we're always coming from protection, which means we're always trying to keep ourselves safe. And sometimes we have these stories and belief systems and imprints that don't make any sense and don't serve us, but they're there because somewhere in a part of us is like, this will keep me safe. This makes me look like I'm doing a good job, or this means that I'm succeeding, or whatever it is. And sometimes those patterns and stories don't serve us. So whenever we are stuck, I'm like, okay, it's time to outsource. So who can hold a bit of a mirror and help me see what the blocks are within this?
Yeah. Okay. I want my child to tell me how they are feeling, but they won't. And I can tell they're struggling with something.
Yeah.
And I can imagine this comes up more as children get older, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I can imagine seeing your kids go from children to teens to adults. That is something you might experience more often.
Yeah. So a few elements within this. The first thing is, when we sit there and we kind of poke our children, like, what's wrong? Tell me what's going on. And we poke. It often is just going to make them shut down even more. So we need to stop almost asking on some level. So when kids have built a bit of a barrier up, they've got a bit of protection going on and they're not wanting to share where they're at, the most wonderful way to help kind of soften that barrier is to play and to laugh. And so it's not about asking the questions, what's happening, all that. It's actually like, what do they love doing? And do that with them. Right? So if it's a 5-year-old and they're feeling really guarded around their feelings, if they love playing Lego, like get home from school or kindergarten and go, let's play Lego, come on. Let's do half an hour of Lego together and just play and be in the delight of them. Like bring your safety and your connection to them. That is often what helps melt that protection to allow the feelings to come out. Laughter is one of the most beautiful ways to create connection with children, that when they feel safe and they feel connected with us, that's often when they'll bring the feelings up. I mean, the other thing I'd say too is sometimes our kids learn from young ages that maybe it's not safe to express their feelings. So if we kind of have shut our kids down when they're little, when they got upset or made them wrong for crying, then sometimes that story gets locked in their body that says it's not okay to feel, it's not okay to express. And if we've done that, and again, we sometimes do that just because that's what was done to us, then sometimes we need a bit of repair work to undo that, which is, again, as you said, like let them see you cry. Let them see ways that you express your feelings and how that feels for you. Maybe you go and apologise to your child and say, I'm really sorry when you were younger if I made it unsafe for you to tell me how you feel, and I really want to change that. And so when you're ready, I'm here. And then the other thing is, when our kids do tell us how they feel, we have to just listen. We cannot move in with fixing. We cannot move into this is what you should do. Our job when our child is crying or they're complaining or whatever it is to nod a lot and just listen. That's it. Just listen and listen and listen some more. And then at the end, when you finish listening, you might say, do you want some help with that, or do you want me to just listen and then follow whatever they say? But again, sometimes our kids don't bring us stuff because we move either into panic or we move into trying to fix, and they don't really like either.
It's I've had over the years, those moments in life where you just have to vent and like let it all out. And I've had a few people say to me, listen, they listen, and then they say, are you open to advice, or do you want to hear mine? And I think when they say that, I'm like, I love that because usually you have people who only care, and I probably do it to, everyone myself, but you fix as a human, you just want to fix. But I think just that venting process and just letting all of the feels out can be in itself really helpful for the individual.
Totally. Listening is one of the most, it's one of the most underrated tools that we've got. Like it's everything. It's absolutely everything. Learning to listen to hear, not listening to fix, is powerful.
Yeah. So this, I guess, leans into your experience raising teenagers about their bodies, about sex, all of the things. So I am raising daughters. I don't want them to experience certain pressures that I gave into, whether it be drinking, sexual experiences, trends that don't align with their true personality. I know they'll cross paths with this stage of life, and I feel worried about it.
So I would just say, firstly, do some talking about it. Get some listening about what feels scary for you as the parent, because one of the trickiest parts of parenting is we know what happened to us and we're like, I don't want that to happen to my child. And so often what we can do is we can overshoot, or we actually just kind of have all that fear and then project it forward. So one of the first things is just get some listening time. What feels scary for you about that? What is there? What do you feel worried about? Like, find a space where you can let out how that feels for you. I think the other thing to remember is that our children, we cannot troubleshoot everything so our children don't experience hard, right? They are going to experience hard, and we can put in place everything we can so our children don't have body issues, or we can talk about it all the time, but there's going to be times where our kids, particularly when they're teenagers, where they're in situations where they're going to be exposed to that stuff. And for me, the goal is to help children stay connected enough to themselves to know what their yeses and nos are. To go, yeah, everyone's getting really drunk and loaded. Yeah, no, that doesn't feel good for me. So I'm going to say no to that. And I feel safe enough to say no to that. And it also feels safe enough that I can ring mum or dad and go, hey, can you come get me? This party's got a bad vibe, right? What we want to be is a parent where our children know it's safe enough to bring anything. So how do we kind of future-proof our kids so that they're okay? Well, you keep listening to their feelings. You keep staying connected with them. You keep playing. You keep finding ways to find those beautiful connections so that when things are tough, you know that they'll bring them to you. But I think there has to be a time where we realize as a parent, my kids are probably going to have that. Like, I was so adamant with my daughters. I did not want them to have body issues and all that stuff. So I made such a conscious effort to model talking about my body in beautiful ways, to stand in front of the mirror naked and go, how strong is my body, it's amazing, and really model beautiful love around bodies, right? And yet still, when they went through puberty, they stood in front of the mirror and went, I don't like my hips, or I don't like this. And I remember going, no, I've done everything, right? And then I realized I'm like, oh, I'm competing against the world here. I'm competing against a very loud narrative that is in their face all the time. How can they not think? How can they not be exposed to this and see it, right? Unless we lived in a community in the bush where they never saw social media or television, then maybe then. But short of that, they live in the real world. But what I did do is I went, okay, you feel like that. And then I sat down with them and I said, my loves, there are going to be times in your life when you're going to think your body's not enough. There will be. And I cannot convince you here that it is, right? Because it's got to come from inside out. But what I am going to keep reminding you of is your power and your magic, and you are more than this, and all the things I wanted to instill them with, to just help them go, there is way more to you. Society's going to tell you it means this, but it doesn't. And I'm going to keep inviting you to find your power and your strength and your magic and your spark and your spunk and all the other things, so that you are connected to your essence, so it doesn't become such a loud voice. And we talk lots about it and we model it, and they are fabulous young women who love their bodies and they own it, like far more than I ever did when I was a teenager. And it's really taught me, again, I can't immunize them against that. It's a loud narrative, and there's going to be stuff in the world they're going to come up against. But what I can do is teach them to be conscious enough to go, does that feel good for me or not? And why am I doing this? And how do I stay safe in this situation? And that comes from having lots and lots of conversations, making every topic okay to talk about, so that they have the right information so they can make informed choices. And then making it safe enough, if they do mess up or something goes on, that they can come back to you and you sit there and you chat and you're like, and how was that for you? And what did you learn? And what would you do differently next time? And you make it safe enough for them to unpack what's gone on, so that they then have more of that wisdom and awareness.
It's a complicated, relentless world for both boys and girls, with just the magnitude of social media, and we're all very prone to comparison and all of the things. But just that remaining that safe space, allowing them to feel what you probably felt as well, and what we all, like, every human has an insecurity that they will feel at multiple times of their life, which I guess is just another part of being human, an aware human.
We can't, our kids are going to have to do hard. They are. Then we can't protect them from that. And what we can do is be right there when it is hard and go, hey, I'm here if you need. Right? But we can't protect them from the hard. They actually need the hard. It's what helps them grow. It helps build resilience. They have to risk and fail. They have to get their heart broken. They have to experience all these things. It actually teaches them the contrast. It helps them understand empathy. It's and the important parts of that is being able to help them process those feelings so that they can move through them.
The word contrast is so nicely used there, I think. So many feelings, but the wins in life are so much richer when we've felt the opposite of that. And with that comes pride and elation and joy. And so, that's, again, just part of building a great life, is feeling all of the feels. All right, so switching to the boy. A boy once commented on my body, and I still carry an insecurity because of that comment. I'm now raising boys, and I want them, the boys, to appreciate how deeply their choice of words can affect girls and young women.
Yeah. Oh, that's a tender space. So I feel that, and I'm just sending a lot of compassion to that person, because I'm like, those words can matter and they can run
the
deep.
The smallest
right?
thing,
Yeah. And I think we have the opportunity to get to a point where we go, you know what, I'm not going to let that comment from some 14-year-old boy, impact me anymore. Like, there's times we get where we go, I'm going to put that down because, I'm going to own a different part of me. So it's big. It's a journey. I think it is all about modeling. I think young boys need to have healthy men who speak in beautiful, powerful ways. I think we can come from that place as a female figure and say, don't do that, and it's not good. And that's still a great conversation to have. So we have to be aware of the power of our words. Words matter. And our words can either build someone up or strike someone down. And it's really important that we are conscious of our words. So we model that in our home. We make sure that we don't do that. We don't use words in those ways, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to copy that. But I also think it's really important sometimes for them to hear it and to see it be modeled in other men. That beautiful, respectful way that they talk about women or they talk about bodies, I think that often needs to be modeled, and so they can see that. So I think they're beautiful conversations to have, right? And we have lots of teachable moments. It might be if this listener's got boys and they're wrestling and they're, and at one point one of the boys says to the other one, you're an idiot and you're stupid. You might want to come in and go, all right, we're going to pause for a minute and have a chat about that. How does that feel when you hear those words, right? It doesn't feel good in your body. And what's driving you to say that? Is that because you feel frustrated and angry? Are there other words we can use instead? And we use those beautiful teachable moments to go, we need to be mindful of our words and the power that they have. So I think there's lots of beautiful teachable things that we can do. And I think modeling is really, really powerful and important. I just think, unfortunately, in our culture, we don't have the rites of passage that we really need to, which is where men take young boys out to show them, what it is to be in integrity in their manhood, and young girls have the opportunity to tune into the wisdom of, the women elders and stuff like that. We don't have a lot of that in our culture anymore, but we can do that in our home. We can do that with our families and friends around us, so that our kids get lots of different influence on what it is to be a healthy human and to come from a place of kindness and compassion.
It's definitely the magic there is in the modelling. You've just got to do what you expect to see back in return.
Yeah.
And if you don't, there's just so much more work to do in the future to rewind those patterns. Yeah. Okay, so the last question, and I feel like this thought is probably really common, but also I feel with the generation above me, so my parents' age, it's even probably more common because, parenting is very different these days. But if parents are feeling this, I hear a lot about gentle parenting, aware parenting, and compassionate parenting. I'm just not this kind of person. I was raised to be firm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This is a good one to finish on. All right. I'm going to come back to a place of going again. There's no judgment. We're doing the best we can. And having boundaries and guidelines is a really, really good thing. But, and again, it's tricky because if I had this person in front of me, I'd ask them more questions around what firm means and what that looks like in their world. Gentle parenting or aware parenting doesn't mean permissive parenting. It doesn't mean that we let our kids do whatever they want. It doesn't mean that they run the family. It means actually being gentle and attuned and compassionate to them, and also having boundaries. And so I think sometimes it can be misconstrued as it just means it's a free-for-all and the kid can do whatever they want, right? I think with the firm piece, what I say to anyone who perhaps got brought up in environments where there was harsh discipline, maybe they got smacked, maybe stuff was taken away from them if they didn't behave, all those kind of things. I often invite parents to think about going back to when they were 4 and they got upset about something their sister did, or that, they couldn't go to the movies when they wanted to, or whatever it was, and how their parent responded to them and how it actually felt for them. Because I've asked thousands of parents that question, and really there's no parent that has said to me, yeah, it was good when my parent yelled at me because I learned my lesson. I think the little inner 4-year-old in all of us went, I actually just wanted my parent to come in compassionately and give me a cuddle and say, hey, I know you're upset. We still can't go, but it's okay for you to be upset. And I'm here and I love you just the way you are. I really do believe our fundamental wound for most people is this story that we're not enough the way we are. We've got to be more of this or do that or whatever in order to be loved. And that is probably because a lot of us were raised in environments where love was conditional. If you do what I want, I'll love you. And if you don't, I'm going to take something away from you until you do. And again, we become compliant. And so, I'd really invite anybody, I guess, who feels like this to perhaps lean into what is it that you did really want when you were a kid? When you were angry or sad or upset, did you want to be left alone in your room by yourself, or did that feel scary? Did you actually really want a parent to come in and go, hey, you're mad, I get it. Like, well, let's let this mad out. And I'm here and I love you just the way you are. And it's okay to be human and have these feelings. So I do know, I think from working with a lot of people that is really the wound and the core, and that's what most of us would have wanted. And, again, it's tricky to answer this question without asking more questions, but, firm can mean just having boundaries, but also lots of love. That's also there. And I think it perhaps maybe is redefining a little bit that some more of these kind of attunement style, attachment style parenting, doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries and we don't have limits within it, but sometimes it can appear like that, so I think there is a balance. I think, a really democratic parenting is a balance of boundaries and limits that are fair, and are set from a compassionate place. And it's also a whole lot of love and laughter and play, and that's ideally the balance that we strike, because kids actually need both. If we have just all firmness and limits and not a lot of love and softness, then, we can often grow up to be people that feel very disconnected from our feelings, and it can be very hard to have joy and play and all those kind of things in our lives because, again, it wasn't modeled to us. So I think the extremes on anything is great. Equally too, if you grow up in an environment where it's really permissive, where you can just do whatever you want, whenever you want, and your parents just try and keep you happy all the time, well, that actually doesn't serve a child either, because then children will often grow up entitled, and they'll grow up going, I just have whatever I want. And that's actually not how it works. We have to be functioning humans in society, which is sometimes about waiting. It's about being compassionate, understanding someone else's point of view. It's many different things. So I think there is a middle ground somewhere. Yeah. So yeah, I hope that answers that question in a roundabout way.
I think what I've loved about getting to know the way you work is you always come back to the perspective of the child, and it's so easy to forget that and to I guess just treat them sometimes as little adults. We just expect they understand or expect they'll adjust to the vibe of the room, but in actual fact their life experience is so small and their emotions are so big, and they are just children, that I think if we just sort of flip the switch and look at a situation from their eyes, especially when they're angry and they're outwardly sharing their emotions, it can be a really nice way to diffuse a situation, is just to remember that you were also once a child. How would you have felt in that moment? How would you like that problem to be solved if you were the child? It is such a powerful thing, and I've only really just started to think of it from that perspective since coming across your work. So, Lael, thank you so much for your time, the generosity of your words. I hope everyone I'm so excited for the second book. It's such a big thing to write a book, so congratulations on not only one but two. And I encourage everyone to listen to all your beautiful podcasts. That I have listened many times to the sessions you've done with the Imperfects, and just thank you for everything. And I just hope so many people find you and follow on and learn from the wisdom that you so generously give out.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. I'm so glad it resonates. I feel very blessed to do this work, and when it lands with people and I get lots of messages, I'm just like, that makes me happy. I feel like we're taking care of the future generations, and that makes me happy. So thank you. Thanks Tori, for having me.
Well, it's been such a pleasure. We'll enjoy your day, and can't wait for this potty to come out so we can share it with everyone.
Thanks.